And we are live. So let's begin then. See, Hanesh, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I've been working on Met Plus, got the PRs merged in, learning a bit of React as well. And today I'll start on the other story, which is the My Profile page, and that's about it for me.
On MetPlus. Okay, great. Good. Sounds good, Hanesh. Sage, I think you were next in line. If you want to go ahead.
Sure. Let's see. I spent a lot of yesterday following up with various coordination loose ends and talked with a researcher at Carnegie Mellon about basically like having WikiEd sign a letter of support for like a NSF grant application to do studies about like different interfaces for like motivating students through social comparison. So basically like try different things with different courses, experimenting with like whether certain data that we show people comparing their work to others will motivate or demotivate them. And that may pan out sort of in the longer term, but we're just sort of talking through the details and what that collaboration might involve yesterday. And then also followed up about the outstanding grant request that I had for like getting $2,000 to basically do a contract with Agile Ventures so that we could get sort of some like other time zone like project management support for like WikiEd for a little while to see if sort of that makes a difference in like increasing sort of building a bigger critical mass around this project in Agile Ventures. And so I found out that that is going to be approved shortly. And so I'm going to work with Sam to get a contract and get that set up soon. And then other than that, just have tried to keep up with reviewing pull requests and helping out Sajal as she's working on her diff viewer stuff, or I mean her like that stuff.
Not diff viewer again. Oh my gosh.
Not diff viewer again. Yeah. So I kept up with your patch and merged it this morning.
Finally, huh? Took me forever to get that done.
How was it in the end?
It came together pretty nicely. It was a bit daunting because not only did I need to learn a little bit about React, but I also needed to learn a little bit about the API, the Wikipedia API.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of different places that particular component was being called, and the calling interface, the arguments sent to it were different in certain circumstances. Anyway, there was a lot to kind of take in at once. But once I got the hang of it, it was very clear. So it was a good learning experience.
Good.
Which is what we're looking for. Yep. Okay, cool. Let's see who's next. Michael, I think you were next in line.
Yeah, so we released that button, like I was saying yesterday, about sign up to start coding, and right now it's even if you're signed in, and you still get it. So I just submitted a PR that's going to just basically, as a first step, remove the button entirely if you're signed in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's up, and that'll have to go through, going through the pipeline of going into actual production. And then Sam and I were discussing that there could be further tickets where, like, a certain percentage of the time, if you're signed in, it says upgrade to get more support. And then another percentage of the time, it say something like have feedback email, a button that opens your email client to send email to Sam. And then maybe another percentage of the time, it says had a great experience on AV, let the world know about it, and it's like one of those tweet
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, to basically take you to Twitter and let you tweet to the world about it. So those are some of the ideas for
Cool.
how we could use that kind of prime real estate in the center of the top of the page to promote Agile Ventures.
Good. Good. We need promotion. Good ideas.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Sejal, how about yourself? How are things with you?
Good. I made progress with the article graphs component, the story which I had mentioned yesterday. Also, I saw the DHH like Q&A session with DHH you guys had. It was quite inspirational. That's it.
Okay, good. Good. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to mention that. So part of my update is I'll just go through the projects on Met Plus. I've reviewed a bunch of PRs, work with Hinesh, Arun, some other folks on getting their PRs through the merge process and the review process. So that's been going well. On that, Hinesh, you had DM'd me on Slack a little while ago, but in regards to Met Plus, after we've done the UI changes,
Yep.
do we have a list of stories or priorities from the client on what we work on next? We don't. We're holding off on that because we're trying to get the MVP with him.
Okay.
And so what we will have, though, is more UI changes because Laura only did the first few screens, most important, the ones up front. But I think she can do more UI redesign further into the app.
Yeah.
I think there are also some stories. I'm going to go through the backlog and see if I can pull some stories forward that we can start working on. We don't have to stop at. It's okay if we go ahead and work on some post MVP stories. I just want to make sure that they're reasonable and they have a good chance of being something that the client would want once he starts looking at the app.
Okay.
But I'll do that. It's my to-do list to go back and start to populate the backlog so we can start pulling stories again. We have a lot of people. Sigu has just added 3 of his students in his code camp in Kenya to the Net Plus project. So there's a lot of pent-up demand to get people stuff to do. Let's see. Yeah, I think that was it for me. I did watch the DHH. I was attending that, David Hannemeyer Hansen, and so it sounds like everybody saw that anyway. If you didn't have a chance to see it, Hinesh or Michael, please do so. It was great. It was absolutely. DHH is a very smart guy, very, very opinionated guy. He may not always agree with his opinions, but he's always got something interesting to say. This was no exception. So it definitely was great. So that's it for me. I think that's it for the Scrum. Anybody else have anything before we switch over to maybe voting on stories for the WikiAd project? Okay, cool. Sage, do you want to go ahead and share your screen and kind of walk us through the backlog? And because you're going to have to explain them all anyway, right? So
Sure. Yeah, so I took a pass at updating this, and let's see what we have here.
Yep.
So I reorganized the. We have a couple of stories over in estimated already that are still there, and and these top 2 are still ones that I think are like pretty high priority and would love for someone to take, but they're mainly CSS, and I think we've just not had anyone take it that was interested in tackling those yet. And then in the to estimate side, I'll just start from the top here with and go through some of these new ones that we've never talked about before. So it should be hard to miss if a course is ended when a user tries to join it. This is something that especially can affect some of the uses that are happening on the programs and events dashboard, the global version of this, where there are a lot of like one-day events, very sort of time-limited events. And if someone like accidentally puts in like 1 day off for the dates of it, then it's not as obvious as it should be to users that like when they show up, like there's a problem with the thing that they're trying to sign up for already being listed as having ended, and then none of the things work as expected. And so we could pretty easily solve that by just like whenever you have the little pop-up that says, do you want to join this course? Have a check in there that sees if it's already ended. And if it is, like, have some kind of bold highlighting of, you know, hey, this is already ended. And if that's not supposed to be the case, contact the person organizing it. So that would be a pretty high value thing that should be pretty self-contained as well. And that'll involve JavaScript mainly, and a little bit of CSS possibly, and maybe a little bit of React, but probably mostly just contained within a single component. This next one is a similar type of issue. It's a situation where if a course has no timeline at all, in the course sort of component, the sort of top level course component, there are a lot of things where, like, if specific conditions are met, it will show a certain message in a banner across the top. And basically this would involve, if a course has no timeline at all, that's a situation that might happen because you sort of exited the course the timeline creation process before you finished it. And so if that's the case, we want to basically route users back to that system where they can set up a timeline, or have them set one up manually if that's what they want to do, but make sure that before they try to say, hey, my course is all ready to go, that they're redirected to create a timeline first. And so basically this involves adding sort of another conditional check that says, if these conditions apply, then put a message to this effect there.
Is it pretty clear that a timeline has not been created or completely created? Could you have a situation where a timeline is partially created and it's tough to detect that? Or is it really just a binary? It's created or not, and it's easy?
Just a binary in this case. It's not utterly trivial to determine that, because like, you have to, there's an API call that, like, will fetch the timeline, and we don't want to show a message like this when it's still just, like, loading and the data hasn't returned yet. But if there is no timeline at all, then basically when you do that fetch of the timeline, it will just return an empty array representing, like, each of the weeks in that timeline, or each of the sort of blocks in that timeline. And so basically this would be like, if the timeline is just an empty array, then do this.
Okay.
And yeah, like, there are a couple ways of making a timeline. So you can make a timeline through this wizard, in which case, if you went through the wizard, then you have a complete timeline. Or you can build a timeline sort of like one block at a time manually up from scratch. And if that's the case, if you've done that, like, you could have a situation where you were not done with your timeline. But the normal instruction that we have right now says, hey, make whatever changes you want to your timeline and then submit. And so that's still the right message there, because we don't know ahead of time in that case, like, whether the user has all of the timeline they want, or whether they want to keep working on it and add more to it. That's not the situation that this is trying to address. It's more like accidentally submitting, or thinking you can submit without including any details at all about what the timeline is.
Okay.
Because in that case, it just basically passes it to staff, who then say, okay, you need to set up a timeline so that we know what you have planned before we can approve your course.
So we do detect, let's say that we have an empty timeline. Do we then just put a notification using the notification component? Or you mentioned something about routing them to the correct place to create the timeline? Or how?
By routing, I meant linking.
Just put a link in there in the notification that says you need to create a timeline?
That's right. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure whether it uses the notification component or whether it uses, like, I think there's a different sort of, like, the banners here actually don't go through the notification component, but there's already sort of like a framework in place for this current message and some other messages that are all basically like they ought to be at some point extracted out of the course component and possibly done through the notifications component, especially once we fix sort of the other things related to notification layout that are at the top of the other queue. But this one, at least for now, like, the way to implement it would just be to add another condition to the set of things that are already going on in in the course component where the submit banner currently gets rendered.
Okay. Sage, I'm wondering if we want to vote per story as you describe them rather than describe all of them and go back and vote, so it's fresh in our memory what we're voting on.
Sure thing. So maybe we'll start with this one and then we'll backtrack to the last one. And then that. So this is, if a course has no timeline, instead of submit banner, the course page should instruct non-admin instructors to create a timeline. And so remind me how we do the voting.
Well, we could just do it on the Slack channel.
All right. Okay.
Sure. We can see your screen, so you enter your number right when you count down, right? But again, remind me, is it 1, 2, and 3 is the typical sizing for the stories?
1, 2, and 3 is what we did last time.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
that makes sense.
And how does it go? Like, what does one?
one means pretty easy, and someone will probably be able to do it in like an hour's work or something like that. And 2 is like more significant than that. Like it might take them sort of up to a full day, I guess. Is that about the optimal sizing there?
I would think so.
And then 3 is your story then ought to be a single task, and it should probably be broken up into smaller tasks because it would take longer than a day of focused work.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. So we're going to do this on the Slack channel, and go ahead and put in your values, and I'm going to count to 3, 2, 1, submit. Okay, so it looks like we have 2 as pretty much the consensus, and I think I was going based on my own.
Would it take you?
Yeah, right. But I appreciate that I have much more context for all of this than anyone else is going to. So 2 looks perfect. Size. Thank you. And now backtracking. It should be hard to miss if a course is ended when a user tries to join it. So this involves checking the current date against the end date of the course within this enroll card component and showing a different message than the one we currently show that tells the user about the situation and asks them to contact the organizers if that's the case. So once again, let's vote in 3, 2, 1, vote.
So it sounded like a 1 to me, but it could be more complex than I know.
I mean, the only reason I say a 2 is just because someone will have to go through the code and see where each bit is, especially for a newcomer.
Uh-huh.
I think it's just checking one condition and having a notification.
So I was just saying 2 because we would have to write some tests, but I'm willing to go with 1. Unless
I like the way you think. There should be tests.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot there, Michael.
I think a 2 is a fair estimate. Do you want to defend your 1, or are you willing to call it a 2, Patrick, if the tests are involved?
Definitely a 2. Whoever does it this would be Mocha test, right? Or test?
It could be Mocha, or it could be, probably more likely actually, would be extending the Capybara feature spec that we already have for enrolling in a course and adding a new scenario there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see.
But even so, it does add a sort of non-trivial overhead of figuring out how that test is organized and making sure that you're testing what you want to test there.
Yeah, definitely a 2. Yep.
Okay, great. And so moving on to the next one. Campaign course data CSVs should include number of users who are newbies. So one thing that we want to be able to like show in terms of the outputs of editathons and other sorts of organized events is like how many new users got recruited through that versus how many of the participants were already editing Wikipedia and they just happened to participate in this particular thing. And so one of the people who is interested in this, who runs the like Czech Republic's education program, where they have Czech students writing Wikipedia articles, is he sort of proposed basically defining this as like if their account on Wikipedia was registered after the start date of the program of the course, then we should count that person as like a newbie for the purposes of like this person is like a newly registered user for this event. And I think that's a reasonable sort of reasonable and implementable definition of that. And so basically this will involve changing the user model to store the date on which that user's Wikipedia account was created. Changing the way that we import new users from Wikipedia when we first sort of ask Wikipedia, who is this user and what's their global ID, that kind of thing. We're also going to need to ask for when their global user account got created on Wikipedia or in the Wikipedia system, and save that on the user model. And then we're going to have to update the sort of, we're going to have a way to put this into the course data that comes out. And so we could store this like in the course model along with the other things that we cache on an individual course. And then make sure that the update process adds that in. And then finally, we have to add a new line or a new column to the CSV output system that we have, where you can click a link and get a CSV with sort of aggregate data for all of the individual courses in a campaign, and have it add this number like as a new column to each of those. So there are a lot of moving parts, but it should all be Ruby. That's the steps of it.
Can I have a question? So why do we need to get the global creation date? Why can't we use the local wiki.edu creation date for the user to identify a newbie? What's the distinction between those two? Or why is that important?
So because we use OAuth, so basically like we rely on an existing Wikipedia account to be able to log in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I may have had a Wikipedia account since 2006. I have had a Wikipedia account since 2006. And so if this was the first time I was participating in a wiki.edu course, then my creation date on wiki.edu would be whenever I signed in for the first time through OAuth to wiki.edu, to dashboard.wiki.edu.org. But that doesn't mean that I'm a new Wikipedia user.
Right. You're looking for new Wikipedia users.
Yeah.
You have valid accounts on Wikipedia, and that's the definition of a newbie, not when they joined the local. Yeah, okay, got it. Okay. And do you have tests for this stuff in terms of the CSV output and all that?
Yes.
You do.
It's all pretty well tested, and I'll have to add testing for this new data coming through as well. But the framework is there for each of these steps. Both, I mean, it's there for the like user creation, user import flow. It's there for the updating course caches flow, and it's there for the CSV output.
So the newly registered account, do you have a time range for that, or is that just the latest one?
So the newly registered count would mean how many of those users registered their Wikipedia accounts since the start date of that course.
Just one last question. So you may have just described this before. Can you explain what you mean by a course cache update? What is that?
Sure. So one of the things that the dashboard does on a regular basis is pull in new data, like from Wikipedia, and so that it has like the latest numbers for how many articles were created, how many revisions were made by each course and each user. And so for performance reasons, the course model caches a lot of that like course level data, caches how many users are enrolled in it, how many articles they edited, how many revisions they made, how many bytes they added, those things. So that every time we display that, we don't have to do a whole bunch of SQL queries to calculate that on the fly. And so basically, during the update process, one of the things that happens is that the data that gets cached in the database on each individual course model gets updated. So there's just basically a routine to run all those SQL queries that calculate the number of revisions and those kinds of things, and then save them each in the appropriate attribute of the course model. And so this would add, we would add a new column to the course table and save the number of newly registered users there.
And cache that value as well, of course. Sounds like. Yep. Okay.
So there's like some kind of task that runs like every day or something, and
that's right. There's a task called update constantly, which runs as many times a day as it's able. Like it tries to run every 15 minutes, but it actually takes about 1 to 4 hours, depending on how many active courses there are. And then there's one that is update daily, which does additional tasks for data that doesn't change as often.
so it's like making a call to Wikipedia's some kind of service.
Yeah.
And importing that data, and then there's the additional caching that basically gets some kind of statistic about the course and puts it in a column.
Precisely.
Okay. And then we would basically be adding that additional step to the task along with the data migration.
Yeah, so in this case, there's something called, let me just look over for a sec.
And then
we have like the course cache manager,
right.
And this is the file where the course cache is updated. And so this would just add another step to the individual course update process.
And then there's obviously some kind of code that like a course instructor can request a CSV file that contains all this information about their course.
That's right. Yeah, there's a link that is not super accessible right now, but we'll probably make it more prominent at some point. But where it basically, not at the level of an individual course, but it gives you CSV data for all of the courses in a campaign.
Okay.
And that is like from the /campaigns page.
And does this, you haven't stated, but I've assumed this story does not involve any loading of existing data for existing users and their create dates, their global create date. Is that correct?
Yes, I think like it would be a useful follow-on to like write a one-off script to like import all of that data like retroactively, like that one piece of data rather. But I think for this task, that's out of scope.
Okay, makes sense.
The data which we are getting through CSV, that has to, like, we just have to have a different query on the same data, or a different kind of data has to be fetched.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, we would basically be importing new additional data regarding the campaign and the courses in it.
So we're gonna
implication there is that we're incrementing the statistic, right?
we're going to import a new piece of data about individual users, which is when their global Wikipedia account was created.
Right.
And then we're going to basically hook up all of the data flow that would filter that into the answer to this question of how many users in each course are newbies.
Right. And then I guess my question is, so for the courses that are already running right now, and this is put into production tomorrow, so how does that affect, like, what is the difference between getting data for pre-existing users look like and getting data as you imagine it? Because if I'm understanding you correctly, are you saying that you would recalculate the statistic wholly, or that you would figure out how much to add to it?
So in general, the course cache update process is designed to be idempotent, so you can run it many times and it should recalculate from scratch, like from all of the data that it has, like what the right answer is. And so I think that would still be the case here. And so it would, like, that's just basically like taking data that's already in our database and just pre-calculating some of the things that we know we need to serve up to people, but they're kind of expensive to calculate on the fly.
Right. Okay.
Any other? Oh, Sejal, what did you ask about?
Yeah, I got the answer.
Okay. So after talking through this, it sounds big. But
It does
let's
sound.
but let's go ahead and vote on it, shall we? 3, 2, 1, vote. Good. So I think 3 is the right consensus here.
Good.
I think this is like definitely a valuable thing, but not necessarily a super urgent thing, and also a good learning experience that is specifically, like, it's all Ruby pretty much, like a little bit of Rails, and like a little bit of interacting with the Wikipedia API, like through Ruby, but very Ruby centric. So that'd be a good opportunity for somebody who's looking for that kind of experience.
So what about for somebody who is pretty experienced with Ruby and Rails but just wants to get into this project?
Yeah, also that, like, great for, I think, especially that, because if you understand like how sort of Rails is strung together, that will help at least somewhat. And yeah.
Might be a good one for pair programming, actually, that story.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to pair with me on that, I would be happy to do that. I think that goes for pretty much any of these. Right. Maybe we'll do. I think that's kind of enough, unless you want to go on more and hear more stories.
I was hoping we get maybe 1 or 2 more just to make sure we got a good queue there, if that's okay.
Sure. Let me just browse ahead really quickly here. Okay. So this one is a design-centric task.
Sage, we can't see your screen yet.
Oh, my bad.
No problem.
The campaign's index page needs to be redesigned to be useful for admins. And so there are some specific ideas for some things that might make it useful. But in general, I think it would benefit from someone like taking sort of a first principles design look at it and saying, hey, like we know that people want to be able to look through these campaigns and do things with them and like make sense of them. So what would be a good design to enable that? So this is the current page for that, and it's basically like, this is something that I hacked together quickly just to have a list available somewhere. This is what you get if you go to /campaigns, which I'll put a link there so that you can take a look yourself. And incidentally, this is where the CSVs come from. Those course data links next to each campaign are the ones that I was referring to. You can feel free to try those out and see what the current output looks like. And so unlike a lot of the other lists of things that we have, this is basically just like a bulleted list of names that link to each of those things. And it's poorly ordered and basically is just not very useful for someone, like as the number of campaigns that we have grows and people want to do things like make sure that the right programs are in the right campaigns, remove ones that are in the wrong ones, move them from one to another, add all the campaigns that apply to each program. Like having something useful here would be like a bigger and bigger priority. So the first step of this would be actually just coming up with like what the user interface should look like, what you should be able to do from this. And then the next steps would be to implement it. This page is done in pure Rails HAML views, and that would probably be the way to keep it. So that's the sort of scope of it.
So when you describe it, it seems to me that there's two stories here. The first story would be to just redesign this index page to be a little prettier and easier to use. Maybe you put a search box in there. Maybe you have a paginated list of these things, that kind of thing. And then the second thing you're talking about, which is actually overlay on top of that functionality controls that would be useful to the admin. That sounds like a second story, second design story, as well as implementation. Do I have that right?
I mean, I think the way that I wrote this story, I basically had in mind more just the former, but done with sort of designed in a way that was like taking into account the things that someone would want to be able to do with it, but not necessarily do from that page, right? So like redesign it with an eye towards the tasks that someone is trying to accomplish, that they need to be able to essentially view and sort that set of campaigns in order to do.
Does one have to have contextual knowledge about what those things might be eventually in order to do the design of the index page? It sounds like you might need to know some of what's in your head.
Mainly I think the tasks here that are like listed are actually like good ones to design it around. Like if you take a look at the things that this person has listed that they want to be able to do with it, like that's as much knowledge I think as I have right now about what would make like the right design for it. I think there's potential to like sort of do some additional thinking about what else a user might want to do, and sort of the more context that you had for this, the better. But that's not something that I already have in my head exactly what that would be. And so that would be sort of like an optional additional sort of like either like kind of user research or just like sort of like conceptual design part of it that someone could take on. Or they could just take the tasks that are there already and design around those. Either one would be sort of fine, depending on what someone wanted to get out of this, I guess.
Okay, so I guess I'm just still a little confused here. So you mentioned you wanted to design kind of like from first principles, like a real UX person would do, or also awesome here that maybe we just throw together something that incorporates these elements, these functional elements you've got listed, bullet points here, and say, what do you think of that? And then we riff on that. What are you looking at, a pure design story here, or let's go ahead and spike something that contains these functions, these bulletized functions?
I mean,
take a look at that.
I would be fine with someone doing either one of those. I mean, I think I this seems like a good opportunity for someone interested in UX design, because it's essentially something that, as it is now, they could almost completely replace, because it has, you know, nothing that sort of is worth, nothing to build upon really, in terms of design. But also just spiking out something that like would meet these needs. I would also welcome someone who was interested in doing that.
Okay. All right, I get it now.
So yeah, shall we vote?
Yep.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, vote.
Oh. Okay. You thought it was a 3, huh, Sage?
I mean, yeah. Like,
Mm.
just because because of the design elements, and because like I would sort of not be entirely like, you know, comfortable like with exactly how to proceed with that. Like it would take me some time to you know, figure out what approach to take with it.
I could go with a 3 because, I mean, if I took this story, what I would do is I'd probably put a search box at the top so you can limit the campaigns you want to view or the various criteria. And then I would also put a sortable paginate section in there, table. And then I would say, what do you think, Sage? And then we'd go back and forth on that. It'd be follow-on work as a result. So the first things I mentioned is kind of a 2 thing, but I think the follow-on work extends it to a 3.
Yeah. It's just
Right,
a back and
thinking
forth, isn't it?
Yeah, back and forth. That's a good way to put it.
I'm sure saying it.
Yeah, it's a design and
Yeah.
refinement of a design once you come up with some initial thing.
Yeah.
So I was between a 2 and a 3 because of the potential for open-endedness.
Uh-huh.
So I would be okay with going with a 3.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, me too. I'm talking into a 3.
And one more.
Yeah, sounds good.
Improved ordering of the campaign lookup when adding a campaign to a course. So the way this currently works is you are, let's see, on a campaign page. I mean, you're on a course page, excuse me, which I'm navigating to one now. And so you want to add this course to a campaign. So you go to the campaigns part and you click here and you get this drop down, which pulls in the whole list of all of the campaigns in the system through an AJAX call and lists them all. And so currently they're just listed, I think, by probably like record ID number because they're not otherwise sorted. And this is a pretty unhelpful way to do it, especially as the number grows, because the newer, more active ones are probably going to be at the bottom of that list. And so probably just sorting it by like the date that the campaign was created instead of the current date, and returning like that order from that JSON like AJAX lookup call would solve the problem.
Are you just using a standard Rails select component there, or are you using select 2 or one of these other JavaScript libraries?
Almost certainly just select, but let me see. I'm just gonna really quickly here try to answer that question for you, if that's okay.
Not sure it makes much difference in terms of estimating, but it's just curious.
Yeah. Well, so we don't use any like alternative like query stuff besides just selects in the whole system. But
Okay.
if we, so this is probably in, I guess, campaigns. That might be it. No, that's probably not it. I'm not sure where it is now off the top of my head. Oh, wait, lookups in the model value. Okay. I apologize, it's taking longer than I expected here. Oh, aha. Campaign, so used to generate list of existing campaigns. So we have this query right here.
Nice comment. I like that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Campaign.all.cluck.title.
There you go.
I think that this will probably be solved just by changing that line.
It sounds like it.
And documenting it and testing it. Any questions about this?
Documentation, you means comment in the code?
Yeah, comment in the code.
Okay. No, I think we're good on that one too.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Submit.
You can't do halvesies, Michael.
1.5 for the tests, I assume.
Yeah. So I would go with 1 if that's what everyone wants to go with.
Yeah. The only reason I said 2 is just knowing the code base.
Uh-huh.
Yep, it's always a learning curve.
Yeah.
Cool. So, well, I mean, I guess this is something that we have to talk a little further on then, if we're going to come to consensus.
No, I think we're all agreeing that 1 is the.
Oh, Hanesh, you're okay with a 1?
Yeah. I mean, as
Okay.
long as you know the code base is fine, yeah. But just getting to know it, that's the thing.
Yeah.
All right,
All right, we'll put the 1 on that. All right. How's that then? Is that enough for you, Patrick? You eager for more?
No, no, we've prevailed upon everybody's patience as it is. So I think we have a good queue now, though. It's great.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for that, everybody.
Thanks.
Until
Which I
next
was
time.
fun. Bye.
Get more interested in this project.
Have a good day.
Michael, you can get involved. Definitely.
I'm in this meeting and we're always voting on stuff and discussing it. And
Yeah, we got plenty for you. There's actually I forget who. I think Sam pointed someone towards our channel recently, working on that was interested in just doing some pure Ruby on Rails things. And he actually submitted. He hasn't showed up for any meetings or said anything on Slack, but he opened a pull request that has made considerable progress on like one of the things that I was going to put into that was in the backlog and that I would have discussed here. But thanks everyone who's like shuttled users this way.
probably
Yeah.
my way in would probably just be one of the Rails things, just to get in touch with the code base and get it installed and everything. Because
I mean, there's quite a few simple stories there anyway to get you going, really.
I've been doing Rails about 4 years now, so
Yeah.
I have a lot of experience with it. But I want to get React experience.
Yeah, we have we have this thing in the previously estimated one that's like the process slow requests involving external services asynchronously via Sidekick. That's one that Patrick has done one on, and a couple other folks have done one on. And there's like a bunch of different things that basically the same pattern applies to, and that's less involving and sort of more self-contained if you want to tackle one of those than the Rails one that we discussed today. That one's very Railsy and a good first task for motivating you to set up a development environment.
All right.
Very Railsy. That's a good way to put it. So, Sage, I'm curious, what did you think of DHS's comments about the way that a lot of these apps are being built now and a lot of the complex front-end frameworks are getting way up the complexity curve beyond the need to be that complex for the specific app?
I mean, I can't speak to the way that all these other apps are, because I think I just basically really know the one.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I think, I think a couple things. I think that once you get over the learning curve of it, which everything you're going to do has a learning curve, like I think React is actually great. I think that the more that I spent a lot more time sort of working on the Ruby stuff because I learned some Ruby first, and because I sort of turned off by the syntax of and the complexity of the JavaScript and sort of its close linkage to design, which I also felt I didn't really have much like skill with yet, and so I didn't dive into the React like until well after I had dived into the Ruby and Rails stuff. But the more I get into it, like I think it's not significantly harder like to work with and get things done in than Rails is. Like just sort of like it doesn't have to be. I think we did some things that were not optimal because we had somebody, you know, we started doing React sort of early in the like React ecosystem's life, and with someone who was like, he'd done a little bit of React before, but this was his first big React project. And so I think there's some like sort of architectural mistakes and like patterns that we should have implemented early on to follow through and like keep things clean that we never did, and that adds to the complexity. But like I think, you know, it's the same problems that you have with like React and how to route data around that and the complexity of it. Like those same things can also happen, you know, if you have a sufficiently complex app that's where all the logic is in like Ruby and Rails. And
Absolutely.
so like I think the diversity of JavaScript frameworks, and like there's so many different things, there's no standard one way to do it, and like the sort of build system stuff and like maintaining a build system and keeping your build system, like getting what you want out of a build system is kind of a nightmare. And like there's still a long way to go, I would say, in our app of like things that I would like to improve about like our setup of how we string all of the JavaScript bits together. And there are not good community standards for that. I think that's right on. But like I think that, you know, especially like the combination of React and Rails, like I would consider building a new project in that, definitely. I think,
Yeah.
you know, like separating out the parts where you want to really focus on the user experience things that a single page app can do. Like if you don't need a single page app, then you shouldn't bother with React, but like a single page app can be a really good experience. That's my take on it.
I'm going to share a link with you guys. It's basically the JavaScript frameworks, Angular, React, Ember, and there's one more. They're good. It's just an upcoming. It's from the guys who created them, and it shows what's upcoming in the next versions of JavaScript on the frameworks.
You left out about 6 or 7 JavaScript frameworks.
I think
Yeah,
so.
no, there's quite a few in here. I think they mentioned about 4. But take a look at the link, because what it mentions is what's upcoming in the next versions and how they got to what they're doing now. It's quite interesting.
Oh yeah, Vue, React, Angular.
Yeah.
What is RxJS?
RxJS is the thing Netflix uses.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting though. Take a listen to it.
Deliver prescriptions to your door.
It's the aspirin you need after you try to understand all the JavaScript frameworks.
Exactly. There's so many out
The
there.
headache. All right, cool. Thanks.
I would agree the build system of JavaScript and the fact that people think it's really cool that like you have to install 500 packages to make the build system work is a real part.
Yeah, it's a pain, and like the dependency management story is not as fully mature as it is in Ruby. Not that that's like a dream either, right? Like dependency management hell still happens in Ruby, but like it's not like in JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll get mature at some point.
And
Hopefully.
that side seems to be going faster, right? Like the build stuff like is not going in as many different directions at once as as the framework stuff in JavaScript. It seems like to me.
Hmm.
I mean, like
Well-
seems like there's tons of momentum around like a few specific things that like the standard sort of like changes every couple of months, but that's different than like there being 8 competing standards at once.
Well, everybody was doing Grunt, then they went to Gulp.
And now they went to Webpack.
Now they're Webpack, and then other people are saying you don't need any of that. You just need npm raw. Be the cool guy that just does npm.
Yeah, but like almost everyone now who's starting like a new project or like updating a bigger framework to use a specific build tool, like it seems like almost all the momentum is around is around Webpack, and like for dependency management, like Yarn is so much better than like npm shrink wrap. So like there's a lot of progress being made.
Right. Yeah.
Good to hear. All right. Thanks for those thoughts.
Definitely interesting. Yep.
Okay. Well,
See y'all
talk to
later.
you guys. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.
Bye now.